Ever wonder what's really going on inside the head of a successful music content creator? On I Want to Eat Your Brains and Gain Your Knowledge, I'm doing just that. This show is about looking behind the curtain, understanding the input that goes into the output we see from creators in our scene. We're all a bit separated, like islands, and that's exactly why I'm thrilled to have my first guest, Matt Bunting. Matt's a TikTok creator who literally lives on an island, but he's found a powerful way to connect to the entire scene, no matter the distance. We're going beyond the usual. Matt's going to reveal how he carved out his unique space, moving from early experiments to becoming the go-to nerd for deep dives and research that actually connects with people.
I didn't know exactly what I wanted to when I started out. I'm a nerd at the end of the day, so why don't I do the research and add in my opinion of things?
You'll hear how he figured out what works for him. You'll hear his take on why creators need to stop being islands themselves and actively jump into the conversation to truly grow. This isn't just about making videos, it's about building community.
I may talk to you guys behind the scenes or DM some other creators, but the collaboration is something that we all need to work on because bands are collaborating together and becoming larger for that reason. Why can't creators do the same thing?
Plus, he'll share his strategy for navigating the diverse world of the scene, including that whole "is it metal" debate without getting pigeonholed. And the surprising balance between those passion projects about small bands and the content that helps pay the bills.
I could either film this passion project that I know is going to get 500 views about a band that no one has heard of, or I could make a video about this big band that I know is going to get a ton of views.
Get ready to gain some serious knowledge about the grind, the community, and the future of music content directly from someone living it. This is the Emo Social Club, where we've been obsessing over this music with you since 2018. I'm Brian. This is our new show, I Want to Eat Your Brains and Gain Your Knowledge. Stick around for my full conversation with Matt Bunting. Welcome to a brand new podcast on the Emo Social Club Network. I'm Brian. This is a podcast called I Want to Eat Your Brains and Gain Your Knowledge, because my idea is like a lot of content creators, a lot of people who make content around music are all over the place. We're all separated. And in many ways, we're watching the output, but we're not talking about the input, or we're not talking about the people behind it. And I wanted to get a sense of like, who are these people? Where are we all coming from? How did we all get here? And metaphorically, I was like, well, we're all on islands and we shouldn't be like separated like this. And we should be, meeting each other in the middle and finding our way there. So who better to have on for the first episode than someone who literally lives on an island? My guest on the first episode is Matt Bunting, TikTok creator. Hawaii is the island that you live on. And I have a few questions about that too. But Matt, for the people who didn't just hear our conversation about the Amity affliction, tell people who you are, what you do.
Awesome. I'm honored to be the inaugural guest on the new podcast. I don't know how much knowledge you're going to get from my brain. There's not much in there, man, but I appreciate you having me on, Brian. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Real Matt Bunting, and I love doing deep dives of bands, trying to help break out new artists and just showcasing the scene that we all know and love. I love the history and research when it comes to bands and the music. So thanks for having me, man. And I've been making content on there for about 3 years now. So I'm really excited to talk about a little bit behind the scenes and what works and what doesn't work, some of the crazy stuff that we see while we're putting things out into the world. And really appreciative of you trying to bring us creators together, because with your island metaphor, you're so right, dude. Like, I may talk to you guys behind the scenes or DM some other creators, but the collaboration is something that we all need to work on because bands are collaborating together and becoming larger for that reason. Why can't creators do the same thing? So thanks for having me on and kicking it off.
Absolutely. Yeah. I very much enjoyed and I want to ask a little bit about how you kind of got started in creating and how you kind of decided to create what you create. I like that you are creating things that are not just like, here's news, here's fact. It's like, here is like what happened and here's how I think about it and here's how I feel about it. My goal for like us was like, I might throw Jesse Lee under the bus a little bit here, who I like Jesse Lee, I follow Jesse Lee. He's a very nice guy. So no shade to him at all, but I'm like, this is the news, right? This is just scene news. This is scene reporting, and that's fine. And there's a place for it, but I don't want to just report on the things that these bands are doing. I want you to enjoy my personality and my opinion and my takes on this, so that I can help to like break out bands that I like and to give some insight on some things that I know, the expertise that I come to with this. And so seeing your content, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Like, I like that sort of thing.
I appreciate that.
How did you start this journey? Like, what got you interested in doing TikTok and deep dives and everything that you create? Like, what got you there?
First of all, shout out to the homie, Jesse Lee. He was one of the inspirations behind me getting into making content on TikTok, because I would see his, news updates or breakdowns of new songs and things like that. But like you were saying, I think the great thing about the scene and about content in general is that there is enough room for everybody to do their thing. And the world needs the news. The world needs opinions. And how do we bridge those two things together, where I'm telling you what's coming out, what I think about it? Another one of my big influences was Finn McKenty, the, previous YouTube scene star, one of the biggest to do it on YouTube in our scene, and shed light on some of the things that we're talking about now and old music. So watching these creators out there, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I know all of the things that these guys are talking about. Like, I'm just as obsessed with the scene as Jesse Lee and Finn McKenty and some of my other favorite creators. Like, why can't I do it? And there's so many different ways to make content. You could have a news show, or you could have a reaction channel, or you could have like a sing along in the car. One of my newest favorite creators out there basically just does sing alongs while he's cleaning or in the car with his crazy playlist. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to when I started out. I was on deployment in Japan, and this was during quarantine, and I was just bored like everybody else on my phone, and I started filming skits. And I would just be either singing along to Silverstein or Attack Attack and like doing these skits. And it didn't take me long to realize that I wasn't funny. I wasn't interested in setting up multiple angles of a camera and capturing myself from all over the room and like performing. It either took too much time, or I realized that it just wasn't for me. It wasn't successful for me. And so I started being like, I'm a fucking nerd, dude. Like, I love researching bands. I love deep diving stuff and like knowing way too much knowledge about Dance Gavin Dance or the Amity Affliction. Like, I'm a nerd at the end of the day. So why don't I do the research and add in my opinion of things? And this is also a time too, in 2021, the scene was kind of making a resurgence again. Like, all of these bands that we listened to 20 years ago were like reuniting and hopping on When We Were Young Fest, or like going on their own tours. And so it was just a perfect time to kind of like reignite that flame for me. And I'd be like, well, why don't I let people know about this upcoming tour from a band we haven't heard of in 15 years? And, I can remind them about these songs that I love. So that's how I got into it, was just like finding my own way and making a blend of the things we were talking about earlier, the news and sort of the opinionated stuff like the Needle Drop would do, or Finn McKenty would do, because at the end of the day, like, I want to share my opinions too. I have thoughts about things.
And like, I know that like what I wanted to do was like, you should like me, and the things that I tell you are going to be good because you like me. And then people were like, who the fuck are you? Like,
yes.
The most I've seen is you talking shit about like this band that I love, or you have a bad opinion on this thing that I care about. And I'm like, oh, wait, maybe there's a different way to go about this. And I'm like looking at you and Jesse, and I'm like, okay, they're talking about the thing that people are already interested in, and then you pepper in a little bit of your personality there. Like, there's a certain like goal, right, in mind, and it's like the goal here is to get views. But for me, it was like I don't want to start with views. I want to start with me, and I want to start with the things that I like doing and creating. I have multiple cameras and I have all this shit going on in here, but I'm also like, in the end, like for me, like I watch you like film something on your phone and post it, and I'm like, damn, Matt's output is so fast. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's not doing it in a fucking studio. He's making it. And I'm like, and let me turn on all my lights and let me get my Duke cameras and angle them and set up my multiple cameras and my Rode. It's like, dude, I want to talk about this stuff, but I have this like thing in the back of my head that is like, if you want to do it, you have to do it like this, because that's who you are in this world. And like, it's nice for me to like follow you and to follow people that I'm like, you're doing something different than how I would do it. But it also is inspiring me to be like, don't do what Matt does, but do something in the way that Matt does it. Which is why, like for the Amity Affliction, I'm like, I'm gonna do some deep dive. I'm gonna do some research here. Because that's what Matt would do. And Matt would come and he would like have all this information and he'd be able to like say it in this way and add in his own background to it. And I think that's like something that I've seen through you that I'm like, oh, I like that. And like you get to know Matt. You also are very good about being involved in the conversation. So you're starting a conversation, you create a video on a deep dive, and you create the conversation, you let people come in and say, hey, do you have any thoughts on this? But you're also in everybody else's thing saying, here's my thought on what you're saying. And I've talked with Lizzie about this, and I'm like, dude, we need to like actually go and participate in the conversations.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard to start as somebody who is starting the conversation and then you're never involved in anybody else's conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something you do incredibly well. I'm just like, fuck, now I got to like take my opinion to the streets.
Brian, step out of your bubble a little bit, dude. No, I'm just kidding. There is an art to it, and I'm not going to say that it is a calculated thing because by no means is it calculated, but I just learned early on in content creation from doing it. If you go to a YouTube video and you watch the newest Architects video, the very first comment or two is going to be Nick Nocturnal. It's going to be Orion Reacts. It's going to be it would have been Finn McKenty, but these guys know that in order to be a part of the conversation, you have to put yourself into the conversation. And for me personally, if one of my favorite things is talking about the lore of a band or some new drama that happened or a new track that I love, what better way to be in the conversation than to like go seek it out or join it, or if I scroll across it, to inject myself into it. And that's where maybe that calculated part comes from, is like, I literally want to be a part of the conversation and have people see that I'm a part of the conversation. And so I just make it happen. That was something that Finn McKenty used to talk about all the time. And I've never had a full blown out conversation with Finn McKenty, but I look to him as a mentor because of the guidance that he gave when it came to things like that. He was big about behind the scenes, like you were saying, about setting up the cameras, having the lighting, having a script, having the correct audio. I learned so much from him, but I threw it all out the window. I threw it all out the window because I'm lazy. I just realized that after setting up multiple different angles and like trying to figure out audio and camera, that what works for me is finding a green screen and just talking in front of it because I got the words that I want to say behind me and I'm dumb and like that. I have that reference. That's really what it came down to. But like, if it wasn't for people who put value into production and things like that, we wouldn't have some of the most well-produced podcasts that are out there and some of the great conversations and interviews. Like those sorts of things set up a great place for that. Because if you were to come do an interview with me outside of your studio, am I going to have you on my green screen with me or like have a picture of you in the back? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, both things are necessary to have.
You know, we're saying with the Amity Affliction too, it's like there's balance. You have to have one, half the other. You don't all have to do the same thing. And it's all about inspiration. It's all about like creating your thing that hopefully somebody else tries to do their own thing based on your thing. We don't have to talk about the long conversations I've had with Finn McKenty. They were not positive.
Don't have to go there.
They were not good.
No shots fired at Finn on this one. Like I said, he was an inspiration to me coming up, and he was a huge helped social media and the scene break out in like 2017 and 18. So I'll never have an ill word to say.
Yeah, I listen. I listened to a lot of Gary Vee back in the day, and I'm not shy about like. There's good shit there. There is very useful information because if you want to be a creator in any realm, if you want to like just work for yourself, you have to learn how these platforms work. And you also have to kind of learn that like it's not all about like your expectations. I feel like in our local scene in Chicago, there was a lot of like everybody's kind of separating themselves from each other and kind of saying like, oh, well, I'm a better guitarist than him, or like their vocalist isn't as good as ours, or you know, there's a lot of like competition because you feel like you're vying for a very small piece of a very small pie. There is no money in music. We do this because we love it. We do this because we care about it, and it helps us to make it through the rest of the day after our 9 to 5 like sucks us dry, and we have nothing left to give, but we have music and we have our passions. And Gary Vee and Finn McKenty to another extent is like, we are helping you to learn how you can work for yourself and make this a passion that actually gets you some attention. And while there might be some other stuff there, you know, that I don't care about, Gary Vee is a crazy person, but he had really good ideas about like how to grow on platforms. And in many ways, like the reason that I'm learning that people know who I am now. And I'm like, well, that's because like I did over the last year a lot of work that I finally was able to execute. I've set up the cameras and I said, Lizzie, sit the fuck down. We're talking about Coheed today. And it's like, and finally people like started paying attention to the things I was saying. Cause I was like, okay, I'm just going to yell at everybody for, you know, a full year of just me saying the worst shit you've ever heard about bands that you've loved since you were a kid.
We need that guy.
Listen, nobody ever looks at my Under Oath video. Nobody ever looks at my Silverstein video. Nobody ever looks at my Thursday video. They only look at like, you didn't like the story so far, so you're the worst person I've ever seen in the world. Your hair is stupid. You look like McLovin. Like, get off the internet. You don't deserve a platform. I'm like,
yeah,
I just didn't think the record was that good, and I might be right because it's not that good.
Sorry, guys.
Their record after that's so much better.
To be fair, I don't think you look like McLovin at all. I don't know where that one came from.
Thank you. You're one of the few that would say that. If I put on glasses and I say chicka chicka, yeah, it's done. It's game
all right.
over.
When Halloween comes around, you got to let me see this.
Yeah, fuck. If I do it, it's gonna be. I wanted to when we were young. The second year, I guess, the one that Good Charlotte was one of the headliners. Christopher Mintz-Plasse, the guy who plays McLovin, was at When We Were Young. Simple Plan was there. Silverstein, I think, was there. And I'm like, okay, and Billy from Good Charlotte. So I'm like, what we need is me, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Billy Martin from Good Charlotte, Pierre from Simple Plan, and Paul Kohler from Silverstein. And we need to all do a podcast where it's like, what's it like to look like that kind of guy? Like we are like one subgenre of guy.
That's funny. That you all look very unique. I'll give you that.
Just talk about music and look like one type of guy.
Now that you mention it, I do see a little McLovin, so I'll take back my previous statement.
I've gotten more Pierre than anybody, which is fine by me.
That's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing at all.
That's not a bad thing. Very handsome man.
Yeah, Canadian, good-looking guy.
You were mentioning being on an island and how you were going to reference that later, but we had an interesting moment about a month ago where my wife makes content online as well, and to be honest, I learned most of my ropes in content making from her because she's so much better at it than I am. But we were at the store and someone recognized her in a grocery store and was like, I know you and your husband that you always mess with too. Like, I know you guys. We were like, that we're in Hawaii. Like, this is crazy. And like, that was the very first time anything like that had ever happened to me. So I was very, not flattered, but like taken aback by that. So that was interesting.
I imagine that being in Hawaii, because a lot of tours, like they obviously do come through, but it's kind of like harder for bands to get to Hawaii. So what is it like being in the scene there? What is it like being, I mean, metaphorically and physically on an island when it comes to like, you know, trying to do content, trying to meet bands, trying to interview bands or anything in that sort? I imagine it's so much harder, and there's probably not a huge music scene, but there is probably like its own core passionate scene that lives there.
So I will say that it is definitely dry out here as far as shows go, but we still do have some. And I'm stationed in Hawaii. I'm active duty military. My full-time job is in the Navy. And so I've been stationed in Hawaii before from about 2011 to 2017. So as all of these bands were like breaking out, I lived out here and I never got to see them live unless I went and traveled back to Arizona where I'm from. And so it was tough seeing shows, but we did have a local scene here. One of my best friends, Manny, was in a band, Dissolved Horizons, that played local shows here, and he would take me to see a lot of the local bands, whether it be a house show, Chinatown near Honolulu. So there were opportunities to see bands, but if you're talking about seeing, for example, a month ago, I saw Under Oath. They performed at the Republic, which is a venue that has host shows here. The Story So Far was recently there. Lorna Shore was there. To me, that's an exciting 3 months to see 3 bands is crazy. I was just like, how are all of these big bands coming to Hawaii? It's usually a lot of reggae shows, local Hawaiian artists that are reggae artists, which I love. There's some great local bands, the Grove, or excuse me, the Green, J-Bug. I'm a big reggae fan, so I enjoy seeing that stuff. But the biggest, probably one of my favorite shows that I've seen here was when Silverstein rolled through in 2017 with Beartooth, and they called it Silvertooth. That was one of my favorite shows. A Day to Remember played the year before, I think in 2016, and I got them to sign a poster, because when you go to these shows out here, there are scene fans here on the island, but it's not a huge population of people. So if I'm like, hey, A Day to Remember, can you sign this? And it's just me there, like, I'm like, it was fun. So we do have the opportunity, but it's not as much as if you lived in Chicago, for example. And when I see your stories on Instagram, I immediately get jealous, because I'm like, Brian's at another show. Brian's hosting another event. Brian's like front row at something. I'm like, I do miss being around that stuff.
Grass is always greener, because I do feel that like this week in particular, and then March in particular, it was like Armor for Sleep, Chiodo. I think at the end of February, it was Silverstein too. So it's even like back into like the last couple of months. It's been like, okay, I've been at shows at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week. And then the U's did their like 3 nights in Chicago. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to the 3rd night. I'm so tired. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm here and either, we're shooting content or we're doing something with them. We did something with Anne Berlin when they were in town. And it's like, when the hell am I supposed to edit that? Like, when the hell is that supposed to actually come out and create the thing? Because I'm at shows all the time. Yep. I have to actually sit down and like do the work. I can't just like be there. And so part of me is like, the grass must be so green when it's like, hey, that show in a month and a half, like, oh, good. I got so much time up until that happens to like do the work and like plan for what that is, and then like go, and then you've got like, a week to edit it. It's like, it becomes a much easier process because you're not doing it all of the time.
That's a good point. If you look at when I see a band that's coming out to Hawaii, it gives me about a month to get excited to go see the band. Like the Devil Wears Prada recently came through, I think back in November or December, and it gave me time to get excited for it, because I'm like, I could see the Devil Wears Prada. Yeah. Or We Came as Romans also came through. It gives me a month to like build up excitement for that thing. So, and what's funny is that most bands are stopping by Hawaii on their way to Japan or Australia. Yeah. And so you either get to see them warm up for their upcoming shows or tour, or you get to see them after they perfected their craft in another continent, and you're getting the best version of what they've been performing. So I shouldn't complain, because it gives you something to look forward to, but it is interesting being so isolated from everything that's happening stateside. And if I want to go to a festival like Warped Tour or When We Were Young, I'm paying $2,000 to go see it, and you're paying a few hundred or whatever for the ticket and the airport, whatever you're playing or driving for other people out there.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are benefits. I'm not, taking anything away. Flying to Vegas is not like my favorite thing that I now have to do every single year.
Yeah.
Those hotels and those flights get more expensive every year, and will never financially recover from that every year. And
they know what they're doing.
They know how to make the money, I guess, because I keep giving it to them. At the same time, I'm like, it always feels like I have conversations with like coworkers or people in my regular life, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to a show that night. It's like, you were just at a show. And it's like, yeah, yes. Like, why do you go to shows all the time? Like, because they're happening. Like, what do you mean? Like, there is a show. I'm going to the show. Like, that's just what I do.
Not only do I like it, but it's kind of my job.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about like, well, you go to the shows because you're working them. And I was like, that makes it sound like I get paid. Like, I really am more saving money than anything. Like, I didn't pay to go to see Anne Berlin, but I did like buy drinks and paid for the ticket, the train ticket to get there. And all of this other stuff does cost money to do the thing. Yeah. I just at least don't have to pay for the ticket, and I get to talk to the band, but that's about it.
Well, that is a interesting part of, I would say, the industry or the behind the scenes, is when you actually get some form of access, because for so long you're creating content or listening to music and you have zero access short of like trying to hit up a band on Instagram or TikTok or something like that and just being like, oh, I love your guys' music, and a comment. But when you actually start to like talk to a band or get some form of, I remember the first time a band, it was actually Outline in Color, reached out to me, one of my favorite older bands, and they said, hey, we have a show coming up. Do you want to like get on the guest list. And I was like, what the fuck is a guest list? Or like, what are you talking about? And they were like, yeah, you can like come to the show and just be our guest there and you don't need to pay for tickets. And I was like, all because I mentioned you in a video, you're going to do that for me? Like, it was such a big aha moment for me and like really exciting because as a fan of the band or just a listener of the band, I never thought, you never even think that you're going to talk to some of the people in the band. And one of the things that I'm trying to avoid as I get a little bit of traction and start to talk to, whether it be bands or labels or promoters, I don't want to lose that feeling.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that excited feeling when a band reaches out and is like, hey, would you like to work together on something? Would you like to come to a show? Or just having an email conversation with them. I don't ever want to lose that excitement because it's not why I got into it, but it is definitely one of the most fun things is being a part of it, is being a part of the creating process or conversation.
After the Armor for Sleep show, our friends in Action Adventure were there. We were hanging out with a buddy of mine and he was like, dude, do you just like DM these bands? Like if you want to do something with them? I'm like, no, why would I do that? Like we go through their press, we go through like their people. And he's like,
yeah,
dude, just DM them. And I was like, they don't know me like that. Like I'm just a guy. And they're like, no, you have done the work. You've earned the position to like be kind of an annoying guy. Like you can bother them. You've earned that right. And like, I think that this was never the goal. This was never the dream. I just like talking about music. It is something that I do in my personal life. It's something that I've enjoyed doing with new people and like having discussions, having arguments, having like just sessions where it's like, let's just listen to this song. Like this song is so good. And like, that's always been my dream. So the idea that like Ben Jorgensen from Armor for Sleep is just like, hey, what's up, dude? Like, I love watching your videos is like, no, but at the same time, like, I see a Nick Nocturnal interviewing Jeremy McKinnon and I'm like, well, I can't DM Jeremy McKinnon.
Right.
But there's very clearly like an understanding of the tastemakers, for lack of a better term, like the people in the commentary scene, in the YouTube scene, in the social media scene who are not the bands, but are creating the content that help promote the bands. What I've known about a lot of artists is they're like, I'm writing guitar parts. I don't want to also film a TikTok. It's like, and if they find somebody on TikTok to talk about the band, they're like, I'd rather just you do it. You already have a following. People already like you. Why would I not just rely on you to be that person? And so it's like inevitably I'm like, okay, Jeremy, come on the podcast, but also clearly like someone like Nick Nocturnal or these other creators are at that level where they're like, yeah, I can just like text Jeremy and go, yo, let's do an episode. You just put out a record. What's your schedule like? And I'm like, nah, I don't think I can do that.
No, it's definitely a symbiotic relationship between the creator and the artist because like you said, they don't want to get on and film a goofy TikTok in order to promote their music. A lot of times, if you're a big enough band like Bring to the Horizon, you just put out a tour poster with your best song behind it and you're gonna get traction on a freaking tour poster. But some of these mid-level bands or even like up and coming bands, if they don't have that social media presence, they're not going to get exposure. And so they do rely on content creators like us. And in the past, because I love the scene and I love new music and I love music in general, I was doing it just straight up for the passion of music. And that's another one of the things I don't want to lose is like, I don't want to lose discovery of new music and I don't want to lose having the love of research and lore of bands. But as you get a little bit bigger, you start to recognize your worth in a way and you start to be like, okay, I could either film this passion project that I know is going to get 500 views about a band that no one has heard of, or I could make a video about this big band that I know is going to get a ton of views, potentially, TikTok creator fund, monetary value out of it. And you have to find a balance between kind of doing both things. Or if a label reaches out to you and is like, do you want to work with this artist that you may not necessarily be a fan of? How do I balance what I want to make versus what I know will like actually let me enjoy the industry and like be a professional in doing this? And sometimes I think that just means swallowing your fucking pride and making the video for the artist that's paying you to make the video, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. I have also, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, because I've noticed that, we as the Emo Social Club are very focused on emo bands, the bands playing when we were young, the bands playing Warped Tour. And I know that like those are not always the largest bands. Obviously, a show like When We Were Young is the same idea as Warped Tour back in the day. It's like we have the biggest artists and we have some smaller artists, and the big artists sell the tickets and the small artists, you know, fill the day. And you might discover a new band. Obviously, When We Were Young is like all of these bands are huge. They're just on different levels. At the same time, I look at that lineup and I go, My Chemical Romance on their own could not sell 80,000 tickets in Las Vegas if they were also doing a full tour across the country. Like, no one would pay for that. You need the benefit of all of these other bands. You need a Fall Out Boy on that. You need like all these, A Day to Remember, Pierce the Veil. You need all of those bands at one time, because all together they can sell a lot of tickets and they can sell the value of it. I understand that from a making content on all those bands way, I'm like, I can't talk about Thursday and expect people are going to show up to the video, because Thursday is not that type of band. They've been around for a long time. They're fucking incredible. So, you know, I wish.
Dedicated fan base.
Yeah. Like I love that band, but like there's just no way that anybody really cares about what you have to say about Thursday. All that to say, the metal scene is what everybody is focused on, because it seems like that is the opposite. Like,
right.
I've noticed a very specific shift from a lot of these more emo band, you know, talking a lot about these bands moving into more of like here are metal bands that are currently touring that are like the biggest names in the game. And I've seen Jesse Lee do it. Obviously, Nick Nocturnal, we've mentioned, like he talks about it a lot. I think Finn McKenty was starting to move that direction before he left YouTube. Like he was creating a lot of it. And I'm like, guys, I'm not going to talk about metal though. I don't have that. Like, it wouldn't be authentic for me to do it. Have you been noticing that trend as well? Like, how do you feel about that?
So the big thing in the scene right now is actually the term metal. And this is what I think is interesting, because look at what just happened with Sleep Token and the debate about if they are metal or not. I think a lot of times people get too caught up on the words and the description or the gatekeeping behind a word like metal. And so what I consider Sleep Token metal, sure, they've got nasty guitar riffs and like drop tuning or whatever. Okay, fine. What I consider, we just talked about the Amity Affliction. Are they metal? They're metal core. Fuck it, they're metal. So it's like Fall Out Boy is not metal, to be clear, but because you can see the Amity Affliction, you know, at the same festival as Fall Out Boy, they become sort of like in the same in the scene. Yeah. And that's why I like referring to everything as the scene, because Sleep Token is in the scene, Fall Out Boy is in the scene, Amity Affliction's in the scene. You know, name another scene band. And so I have made it very intentional in my content not to pigeonhole myself, because not only do I love all of these bands, but if I were to only talk about black metal or death metal, then I'm going to exclude a whole population of people who love Fall Out Boy that I love Fall Out Boy too. And so what I've been trying to do as we go along is like start using the scene in general and bring, they call it like a big tent. It's kind of like politics. They're like, we got a big tent for everybody. That's how I feel about the scene. The scene is made for everybody. Anybody can hop in at any time they want or get out anytime they want if they don't like a certain part of it. And because I love pop music too, I love hip hop, like I'm trying to branch out as a creator and not pigeonhole myself. And I would, implore other creators who are thinking about like niching down really hard into, like you said, emo music, like, as a niche, you know, think of creating content and the videos that you're going to make or that I make as a set list where you have the small bands at the bottom. I love talking about those guys. They need to be represented at 12 o'clock on a Saturday. But I also love talking about the big bands at the top, like My Chem, which I know are going to get the clicks and the views, but I'm also going to talk about those small artists at the set bill too, because I want to bring in new fans. I want to appeal to people who feel underrepresented and things like that. And it just gives you another way to showcase your creativity too. If I'm talking about the Funeral Portrait or Sleep Theory and nobody knows about them, the band might see it and be like, oh, I kind of like this creator. Like maybe we'll work with them in the future. And like, you never know what can come out of working with a smaller band. My Chemical Romance isn't knocking at my door. So like, I want to work with artists that are still on the way up and like, we can help each other out, if you know what I mean.
It is very true. A lot of these artists are looking for their opportunity to work with somebody who is helping with content, helping get the name out there, because their goal is to like continue doing that. And if they do, if they get the success, when we met Action Adventure and we saw them like rising up, we were like, hey, we're going to be on your coattails. So just take us with you. Just let us know where you're going.
Yeah.
And so every success they have, they've been very like friendly to us. And they're like, we want to work with you. Let's do something. Let's get you back on. Like, let's do whatever we can. And I'm like, yeah, please. Like, you guys, when you hit success, I'm glad that we were there and played some small part in that. We met Pink Shift at Riot Fest, I think 2 years ago now. And we had learned of their band like when we were doing DJ streams during the pandemic. And Lizzie is a big fan of them and was like, hey, play this band Pink Shift. And I was like, hell yeah, like this is really good. And their sounds kind of changed. And I saw their set at Riot Fest and I was like, dude, I was unfamiliar with your game. Like, you guys are intense. You guys are so good. And we talked to them and they were like, yeah, we know you guys. Like, you guys like played our music during that thing. And like people came over, they were like, hey, I heard about you from Emo Social Club. And I was like, I like want to accept that. It's just like, there's no way, you know, like there's no way that you came from this small band. And then somebody said, I heard about you from, you know, these two idiots on Twitch. And now all of a sudden, like, I'm playing Riot Fest and now we get to actually talk to you. It's like, I would never put like a line between those two thoughts. I was like, nah, I just like this music and this band's good and I'm gonna check them out. And I support, you know, all the different types of people and all the different types of music in the scene that like, I just want the success for everybody. Don't worry about me. I'm just, I'm just here.
Yeah. That really is what it's all about, is just bringing exposure to something that you love, and you're also helping out people on the way up. I recently saw a post by Ronnie, and I'm not going to get into anything like too big Ronnie related because that's not what this podcast is about, but no.
That's my third podcast I'm creating.
Good. Let's do it. Let's get ready to rumble. So essentially his argument was that we don't need music reviews anymore, because essentially when an album drops, everybody's got access to it at the same time. And there's no exclusivity to somebody reviewing it ahead of time and building up interest and creating a buzz, having it come out. So I disagree with that to a certain extent, though, because reaction videos wouldn't be a thing if that was the case. Like, people want to feel like they're a part of something. You may be listening to it at the same time as me, but you want to feel like we're having a conversation about it, or you're enjoying something with me. Or if I'm talking about Dance Gavin Dance and you already know the story about Johnny Craig and all the crazy stuff he did, you either want to hear it again or you want to be a part of the conversation if it got brought up in a room. If you walk into work and somebody's like, dude, Johnny Craig on the internet, MacBooks, you'd be like, I want to talk about that. I haven't heard that in 15 years. You're just taking that space and you're putting it online where people can comment and have a discussion together. So I don't think that we are obsolete. We're just changing the way that people look at the music review business or reaction business. It's evolving just like music is.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I agree with you completely, because like, it's not to go too much into Ronnie, but I'm like, it feels like one of those things where it's like Fantano stopped talking about my music, but also I'm like, I have this theory about Ronnie where I'm like, this is the character, right? This is wrestling. He is a character. He is not Ronnie Radke. He's just a guy. But Ronnie Radke, the character, is the person who does all of these stunts and all these things. In that way, he's like, we've evolved past the need for somebody like an Anthony Fantano who is doing these reviews. And I agree with you completely. It's like, it's not about Anthony Fantano. It's about Anthony Fantano and thousands of other people. And every individual who listens to your music has a review of it. They just might be like, I like it. It's just not, you know, every single person when they listen to music is in their own way reviewing it. Yes, we all get it. There's no need for the hype on the internet. If I'm going to a show like once a week and I'm running into the same people and a new record came out, it's like, that's my opportunity to go, yo, did you hear Never Take? What do you think about this new Anberlin thing? Because now I'm at the show and I get to talk to other Anberlin fans about the record they just put out. If you're, only seeing a show once every month and a half, maybe that community is not people that you're like seeing every other day. So now, well, where do I get to talk to them? Well, I'm going to post about it on the internet and I'm going to talk to anybody who wants to comment on this and have that conversation with just the community that's built around that versus a community that like I'm going into a venue and having the conversation with them, which also is inspiring to me because I'm like, man, fuck my friends. Like I got to go talk to the internet. Like none of you
Yeah.
agree with me about these records. I got to go talk to the internet and get them to comment on it.
It reinforces that bubble that we're all living in. Like
Mm.
we've all got niched down into something. I get a lot of inspiration from, honestly, like people that I talk to on the internet. If they come out with a video, whether it be Logan or Jesse might talk about a topic, and I'll be like, oh, I did not know about that. Let me look into that a little bit, form my own opinion, and then make a video about it. Or people that I work with who are into rock music will be like, did you see Linkin Park just had a new vocalist? And I was like, oh, no shit, let me go listen to this. And they'll give me their opinion. I'll form my own off of it and then make a video about it. We're just, like you said, we're all forming opinions. Just some of us happen to be sharing them online for hopefully millions of people to see.
The views are nice. I sometimes find myself getting a little bit too caught up in them. And then I have to like remind myself, like, look, I made this thing because I care about it. I didn't make this because I cared how many people saw it. I cared because I wanted to make it. And if I, have a core group of people that like what I do, they'll see it and they'll enjoy it and they'll comment on it and we'll have a conversation about it. And above and beyond, more important than the views or the, 20 cents I get, for, whatever it is. TikTok money has gone down quite a bit and it sucks.
Yeah, I don't know what happened last month, but it's definitely the RPM has definitely decreased. But like you said, it's not about the money. I think I mentioned on the previous podcast that my favorite thing about content creation is the conversation. I know who my people are. I want to be a part of the conversation. I want to hear what, everybody has to say about the new album that came out. And like, it just creates like this space where you can like be with your people and enjoy talking about things that you like to talk about. Like, that's why we all got into music, because it resonates with us all on a different level. And it's emotional and it's fun and it's exciting. And the drama is interesting when there's weird stuff happening in the scene. All of that stuff creates an environment that you want to talk about and like be a part of. And you have to go seek those things and be a part of the conversation if that's what your goal is.
We could probably talk for another 2 hours, so I don't want to take up the rest of your time. But I want to ask you one more question. This is something that I want to create a video about at some point, and so I want to get your thoughts on this because you mentioned like your background in listening to a lot of hip hop and having sort of this variety of music in your life. I want to make a video about the greatest albums of all time and why no emo records, no heavy records, none of our scene is represented in the greatest of all time. I'd say like, the ones that are talked about all the time, To Pimp a Butterfly, My Dark Twisted Beautiful Fantasy. Like these are artists, especially in hip hop, especially in that genre, that are considered some of the greatest records of all time. Why is it that our scene is not considered that? Not like there's no record that's considered one of the greatest of all time. Even if we're saying like the Black Parade is maybe like the closest to it, which I completely disagree with that. I'm like, this isn't even the best My Chemical Romance record, let alone the greatest of our scene.
That's funny. That reason right there is probably what it is. I think you just nailed it.
Because we can't agree.
Because look, you're 100% nailed it right off the bat. And I'm not saying all hip hop fans agree on everything, but when people say their favorite Metallica album, or they say their favorite Kendrick album, or their favorite Beyonce album, Taylor Swift, whatever it may be, they at least agree on like the certain premise of things. And we have niched ourselves so far down that agreement isn't there. So while I think that you're probably right, I actually like Three Cheers a lot better.
So much better.
The Black Parade is probably the biggest album we've had in the scene, like commercially or pop culture wise. And so if you're going to put it on that Mount Rushmore of like, okay, that's the scene one right there, that is the biggest one. We, unfortunately, I feel like are a little bit smaller than we give ourselves credit for in the scene. There was a time between like 98 and 02 when it was like Linkin Parks and the Limp Bizkits and the Corns, and like these guys were huge, dude. And like, I hope that we get back to that point at some time in the scene, because that's where a lot of our Mount Rushmore albums still are, is back then. We had an opportunity in the mid 2000s and the early 2010s of like bringing that back for emo music. But unfortunately, I think the Black Parade was the last one that like really stood out. And I think it's because we have either niched down too far or we're a little bit smaller than we actually think we are. But there's still a chance. Like maybe if we get another 20 years, we'll see the third wave of emo nostalgia resurgence and we'll have that opportunity. But it's just a different time for rock music. Unfortunately, it's taken a backseat to pop and hip hop, and that's where we find ourselves.
If you had to pick on the upper echelon of the greatest albums of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller, like of the emo scene, what record would you want to be represented in that?
If I could choose one scene record to put on the pedestal, it would be Take This to Your Grave. I think it is the best Fall Out Boy record. I think it encapsulates the scene and emo music to a T. From Under the Cork Tree was probably a more commercially successful album, but when you think about the scene, you cannot help but think about Take This to Your Grave. And I know it's probably the chalk pick, or it's a lot of people's popular pick for scene records, but if we're going to take one into the courthouse and slap it on the table and be like, this one's going in the books, take This to Your Grave is going in there, man. That's the winner. Like that has to be the one that we prop up for the rest of time. It has to be.
It is Fall Out Boy's best record. It's one of the best of our scene for sure. I agree with you. It took me a long time to come around to Fall Out Boy. I think I'm eventually going to have to answer this question for myself, and I'm going to probably say either Fever You Can't Sweat Out or it's probably going to be Fever You Can't Sweat Out would be mine. Like
you can't lose with Panic. Like you have a winner there with that one too. And then you got to be like, well, was Panic as big as Fall Out Boy? Probably. Is Brendan Urie bigger than them now? I don't know. Maybe. Like you start getting into all these side quests, but I think you're there with some. We can come out with at some point we can come up with a top 4 at least, the Mount Rushmore of scene albums, let's say, and one of those has to fit the bill.
Yeah. Dude, I have so many like random video ideas that I'm like, I'm going to do this. Like I have an idea for like top 10 discographies. Like these are like ranking from 10 to 1 who has the best discographies in the scene. And I'm like, it's just going to be
your collaboration thing though. If you do like, this is off topic, but if you do something like where you invite me on to talk, you can have like a bunch of other people in the scene, like you've been saying, man, and get all of us together talking about different stuff. And I think that's so cool what you're doing, and get their takes on the top 10 and the Mount Rushmore and all that stuff. And it gives you an opportunity to showcase other creators and also like lift us all up at the same time, including yourself,
Oh yeah. Listen, I'm riding coattails and
I like it.
My big push this year was like, we did, me and Lizzie talking about what we wanted to talk about and getting the attention on us. And now if we are in that position where we can reach out to people, it's like, cool, let's reach out to them and say, we'd love to talk about this. Like, do you want to just sit there and like shoot the shit and talk about this thing? And now we're just like all coming together and like being friends, and like we can all just like have these conversations, ask questions like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Do you think this is a good idea? Like, I don't have anybody in like my regular life who can do that with. So I'm like, the idea that there are people that are doing it, but I feel like we're competing, and I'm like, we're not. Like, I don't look at you as a competitor. I look at you as like an inspiration, and I look at you as like somebody who's doing the same thing that I'm doing and can help me to do it better. And I can also ideally be a resource for you if you've got an idea. And it's like, that would be a much better way of building this whole scene up to where we get to have like enough people that pay attention to it that it can be a greatest record of all time. That's a very high aspiration.
One thing I learned, I worked in the fitness industry for a while. One thing I learned is that there's enough out there for everyone to get a piece of the pie. Like there's always going to be someone that needs help with working out or fitness. And there's always going to be somebody that wants to find new music or talk about old shit. There's enough of that out there that we can all thrive. And I think you bringing people together and like showing that we are not in competition.
Well, Matt, I am so happy that you were the first guest. I'm so happy to have you on. I'm so happy to be able to talk to you for this long. This is, like I said earlier, this is a long time coming, and I'm very happy we got to do it. Let's definitely do it again at some point. We'll do some other activities. We'll talk about other music. This has been great, though, and I really appreciate it. Just remind everybody where they can find you on the internet.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you again for having me on. I love your and Liz's show. It is one of my favorite things about the scene is having these conversations and talking about the creativity behind it. You guys can find me at Real Matt Bunting. I'm on all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. And I'm really excited to see the direction that not only your podcast goes, this new episode you're taking on, but also where the scene goes in general, because I think we got a lot left in us and it's on the upward trajectory for the past few years. And I'm excited to be a part of it and want to have that conversation. So follow me on socials, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Matt. And yeah, we'll get in the comments and talk our shit.
Yeah, thanks, bud.